Hello, class. Today we're going to undertake the task of discussing and kind of unpacking the Foremost Department Stores Incorporated case study. Today, I'll go over some concepts that we want to consider and maybe talk through some questions. Hopefully, that so we're all on the same page and can carry on a good conversation about it. And so, things to consider. One, there is going to be some pressure on Gregson to make the right choice. And so we know that Gregson needs to and wants to fill this position with mind to have departmental success, right? This endeavor is going to look and be impactful for his career as well as the career of his entire team. And so they want the success of this to go very, very well, obviously. There's a company-wide respect and kind of company-wide image of himself that he needs to maintain. He has gained a certain amount of respect already, and so how he handles this situation is going to potentially impact how people view him in the future. As well as the success of the department. If the department fails, then again, this will impact his future as well. Gaining buy-in. Buy-in's a concept that we like to look at in terms of how do people view him, how do people view his leadership, how do people view his decision-making ability, and so again, how he handles this is going to impact the future commitment of individuals on his team, perhaps the potential of future employees from other departments coming to his team, and so we just want to think of what does Gregson need to think about in terms of how to make decisions for this hiring practice. Okay, and so we've talked about many concepts like fair process, values, terminal instrumental values, ethical decision making, all these kinds of things. And so all these things typically need to go into your mind when making decisions like this. And so there is no necessarily right or wrong answer. There are wrong things and there are right things potentially, but this is a situation that we need to think about in terms of, what if we were in this position? What would we do? And what if the position changed a little bit and the situation changed a little bit? How would that, or how does that change our decision making? And so this case has a great deal to do with ethics, okay? And so you might not see this at the very beginning, but ethics and discrimination are going to be key components of this case that you'll want to think about. And if after reading the case and answering these questions, ethics and discrimination weren't at the forefront of your mind, that probably shows that perhaps you might not see it that way, and perhaps you wouldn't consider this something that Gregson needs to think about ethically. And if that's not where your brain goes, my question is why? Okay, and so again, you might still be asking, what does this have to do with ethics? Well, you need to think about who are we protecting? What kind of decisions are we making? Is there discrimination against certain individuals with certain conditions? All these things matter. And some of you might think they matter less or more, or they shouldn't be part of the decision making, but nonetheless, this is a discrimination case that we need to consider. And so you have to understand that for a person in this position like Gregson is in, all decisions come with consequences and considerations for you to think about, for you to consider, for you to wonder about, because decisions for business leaders don't happen in vacuums, right? We can't apply all of this theory and think, okay, everything's going to be cut and dry, very simple to look at. These things are dynamic and are evolving on a daily basis. And so the questions that I asked you to look at are as follows. As Ryan Gregson, what factors do you take into account in deciding whether to invite Diane Riley for a meeting to discuss the position? 2, what are you going to do? And 3, if you decide not to talk to Diane Riley or to talk to her and decide not to offer the job, how do you explain your actions to Doug Brancroft, who is the Vice President of Human Resources? And so some things to think about. As Ryan Gregson, what factors do you take into account? Clearly you know about her medical history, and so you're thinking about that. Regardless if you believe you should or not, you are thinking about it. 2, you're thinking about how will Diane Riley react to the decision either way. 3, your relationships with Doug Bancroft, Tony Augustino, and all the other members of these teams who have a vested interest in what you're deciding. 3, your own career, your own future. right? What is the best for this position? Who is the best? Who is going to put you and your company and your department in the best position to succeed? You know, next, maybe this should be the first thing. Is there an ethical decision here? Is this ethically in question? Right? Should you be considering what the ethics are? Of course, you should be, but is there an ethical decision to make? Right? So, all these questions, you have to answer these, and you have to think about these things as you answer what Ryan Gregson should or should not do. And that's a big deal because ultimately, business leaders are faced with these decisions all the time, and they're forced with trying to wrestle with is there an ethical problem with how they are operating? Okay, and so if you don't ever see the ethical problem, it's probably because you don't realize there is one, because we're always going to be faced with them. And so the next question is, I want to know, what would you do? Okay, and so we'll talk about that as a class. Are you going to invite her for an interview? Are you going to not invite her to an interview at all? Are you going to talk to her about you knowing about her condition? Are you going to ask her about it, about her family life even? Do you want to invite her and then already know you're not going to hire her, right? These are all possible actions, but again, all these actions have ramifications, right? If you invite her for an interview and don't end up hiring her, even though you didn't talk to her about her medical history, she's going to wonder why she didn't get the job, because clearly the case states that she is great for this job. If you talk about her medical history, then does she accuse you of discrimination? Right? Do you not invite her for an interview at all? Then she's going to wonder, why did she not get an interview, even though, again, she got highly recommended to you and all these kinds of things. All these things you need to consider as a business leader and a management professional. And so if you decide not to talk to Diane Riley or not to take her, how do you discuss it with Doug Bancroft? Right? Do you explain that you did it because of a medical condition, and then maybe he accuses you of unethical business practices? Do you just say that she wasn't right for it, and then Doug Bancroft questions why, and you have no answer? Right? These are all things that someone has to balance in terms of what they do. Okay? And so, while at first maybe you thought this was a pretty straightforward case, I'm hoping that you're realizing that there are decisions and thought processes that you need to consider before kind of jumping to a conclusion. So after answering these questions, you're going to be faced with several different outcomes. If you don't interview Diane Riley, questions will arise. Why? She will ask questions because she clearly wants these kinds of positions in the future. If you don't offer her the position, you could say they're not the best candidate. How would you justify this? And again, you might be able to justify it well without talking about her medical condition, but then ethically, is that bad? Is that wrong? You're basically just lying. Right? And so, again, you have to question your ethical behavior. You can explain the health risks to her or to everyone involved. Again, then she'll wonder why. Do you know about them? You were not supposed to know about them. This is privacy issues. Tony Agostino shouldn't have told you, maybe. Right? Questions are there. Questions are there for you to potentially be at risk. Right? If you do offer the position, right? You don't comment on her health. You just hire her because she is, on paper, the best candidate for the job, potentially. You can emphasize the nature of the job and consider it. Raise your health concerns, but then again, you reveal your discussion with Tony Agostino. You could ask her for a medical examination. Again, all these things have questions and have considerations that you need to take before actually doing them. So no outcome is perfect here, as I hope you can understand that. One, because you've already been given information, right? Some of this stuff wouldn't even have come up if people didn't tell you certain things. Right? If you don't know about the situation with Diane Riley, then it doesn't matter because it doesn't come into your decision making, right? So think about that. Like, you probably wish you didn't know, but you kind of want to know because you have full information. But then just knowing that potentially puts you in a position where you are going to make an ethically questionable decision, right? And so a few concepts that we want to look at and consider in this case study. One, paternalism, where you take this role of like a father figure. You're trying to protect an individual, right? So is it your decision? Is it your responsibility to take on this position? Or, oh, I'm just protecting her. I'm not going to put her in this position because of the health risks and the situation with her family. I'm doing her a favor, right? Is this your choice to make? Is this your responsibility? Is this pretty presumptive of yourself to think that you can, make a better decision for this person than themselves, right? It's a problematic thing, right? It happens all the time, though. Conflict of interest, right? Whose conflict of interest is there? Who's making the right choice? Whose interest are you looking out for? Your own, hers, the company's, your department's? Which stakeholders or which people should have the ultimate say, or should you be worried about the most? Informed choice, right? One, informed choice for yourself. Should you know about her condition? Two, should she know about what she's getting into? Or, all these kinds of things. Like, what should you know? If with perfect information, decisions become clearer, but also can be more complex. Keeping confidences. Tony Agostino had an issue with that. You again, does Diane Raleigh deserve to know that you know about what's happening? Again, then you break Tony's confidences. All these kinds of things matter. And then straight up discrimination. If you do not hire her, are you discriminating against her because of her medical condition? I hope clearly the answer is yes, right? Discrimination happens all the time. When are you allowed to discriminate against someone because of fear that they will not do their job well enough, or that they'll have to take time off, right? And so if you are in the camp where you're saying, well, it's fine, you should be able to not hire her based on the fact that there's risk that she does not complete her term or has to go on medical leave for a month here or there, right? If you say that on the chance that she might have to take time off, then do you also agree that, well, on the chance that a woman gets pregnant, she'll have to take time off too, right? And as soon as I go to that point, people will walk back their answer, right? And so you have to understand that discrimination is discrimination, and then you have to determine, is any discrimination okay? And I'm going to say no. But again, it happens all the time, and it is part of how corporate structure works. And so that's why, I'm trying to emphasize this ethical decision making, and why are you going to compromise your ethics to justify a certain position? Power dynamics, who has the power here, who is holding power, who ultimately gets power. And so you have power, for sure. Gregson does, Bancroft does, Agostino does, and Diane Raleigh does, right? Labor law protects her, or should protect her, as someone who maybe does not have power in terms of the corporate structure, but has power legally, and should have power legally, right? So there are significant power dynamics at play here. And then there's getting buy-in conceptually. Like, you need to get buy-in from your people to have a good operation, right? If you mess up this first big decision, you might be putting your organization or your department a step back right from the get-go. Okay, so these are all concepts that we're going to talk about in class, and we're going to discuss and think about. And so hopefully we go through this well, and you guys all have a good sense of, what decisions are there to make. Thank you.